echoes through the air, faint at first, then growing louder as the crowd swells. Someone shouts, "This lady just wants to be safe." And the cheer ripples through hundreds, standing shoulder to shoulder. The chants rise. The drumming begins. The streets outside number 10 Downing Street, the heart of British power, are shaking. But it's not just noise filling the London air tonight. It's anger, exhaustion, and something deeper, a broken promise. Not a shattered window, not a toppled barricade, but a fracture between a nation and the man leading it. And that fracture has a name, Keir Starmer. Thousands are gathering under the cold glow of streetlights, not waving party flags or shouting slogans, but holding bills. Energy bills that have tripled, heating bills that turn comfort into a privilege, the kind of bills that don't care about your politics, only your survival. This isn't a protest of ideology, it's a revolt of necessity. A cry from ordinary people who've had enough. From Parliament Square to the gates of number 10, the streets are packed so tightly that police have sealed off 3 blocks. Handwritten signs on the backs of final notices sway in the wind. The chants began at 6 in the evening, and 4 hours later, they're still echoing. This isn't chaos, it's organized pain, 2 years in the making. Before we break down what led here, hit subscribe and stay with us, because this story, this moment, is unfolding in real time, and what happens next could define Britain's future. When Keir Starmer stood before the cameras in 2024, he made a promise, one that resonated across a weary nation. After years of political chaos, he vowed to bring stability, fairness, and hope. He spoke of rebuilding trust, putting working people first, and facing the cost of living crisis with courage and compassion. Those were his exact words. Printed on campaign posters, broadcast in interviews, repeated in Parliament. Across Britain, his image appeared everywhere, sleeves rolled up, leaning across kitchen tables, listening to ordinary people. The message was clear. He understood. He wasn't one of them, but he was for them. But 2 years later, the picture looks very different. Energy bills have soared by 54%, and more than 2 million households have slipped into fuel poverty. That's not speculation. It's official data. Meanwhile, over £30 billion in so-called green subsidies has flowed to foreign-owned energy corporations, while British families ration heat and food. The disconnect between promise and reality has become impossible to ignore. Inside Westminster, ministers speak of sacrifice. Outside, people are living it, choosing between heating and eating, while watching those same ministers claim expenses for heated second homes and chauffeured cars idling outside Parliament. When challenged in Parliament last month, Starmer dismissed public anger as short-term thinking and insisted his net zero agenda was non-negotiable. That single phrase, non-negotiable, hit like a slap across millions of cold kitchens, because for those who never negotiated away their heating, they simply lost it. The video clip spread online within hours, not because of what he said, but how he said it, polished, distant, rehearsed, the voice of a man reading lines written by someone who's never checked the price of boiling a kettle. Take a look at who's out there tonight. They're not extremists, not agitators. They're ordinary people. The very faces that once filled Starmer's campaign ads. You'll see nurses still in their NHS uniforms after 12-hour shifts, holding signs that read, "I save lives, but I can't afford to heat my home." You'll find teachers, wrapped in scarves, telling reporters their students come to class wearing winter coats because their parents can't afford both breakfast and heating. Pensioners, men and women who gave 40 years of their lives to this country, now stand in silence, forced to choose between medication and warmth. And small business owners, their livelihoods erased by rising costs. Bakeries in Leeds, pubs in Cornwall, print shops in Manchester, all shuttered. They aren't denying climate change. They're asking a simple, human question. Why are we funding foreign wind farms while British children sleep in coats indoors? But in today's Britain, even asking that question can feel like heresy. Government officials have responded with disdain. Energy Secretary Sarah Jones dismissed the protesters as useful idiots for fossil fuel companies. Climate Minister David Walsh accused them of being scientifically illiterate. But if you stand among them, you don't see fools, you see abandoned citizens. People who kept quiet for too long, finally finding their voices. And beneath the chants, one truth cuts through the cold air. You can't save the planet by destroying the people living on it. Net zero isn't the problem. A net zero policy that protects the powerful and punishes the poor is, because green levies don't touch the wealthy, they crush the working class. Carbon taxes don't hurt multinational corporations. They shut down local factories. The rich install solar panels with government rebates. The poor sit in darkness counting pennies. And when energy giants announce £4.1 billion in record profits, the government's so-called windfall tax collected less than a third of what was promised. Shell paid just 19%, BP 22%. Meanwhile, a single mother in Birmingham paid 100% of her doubled bill, with no loopholes, no accountants, and no escape. That isn't leadership, that's performance. And the audience has finally stopped clapping. The numbers tell a story that no speech can soften. In 2024, about 8% of British households were living in fuel poverty. Today, that number has climbed to 14%. Over 4 million homes where people spend more than 10% of their income just to stay warm. Among pensioners, it's even worse. Nearly 1 in 4 now rations their heating. Hospitals have reported a 31% rise in cold-related illnesses within just 2 years. Last winter alone, 3 elderly citizens in South London were found dead in homes where the radiators had been turned off, not by accident, but by necessity. Inside Downing Street, advisors are likely reassuring Starmer that this will all blow over, that it's just noise, that public anger fades. But listen closely, those chants outside aren't fading. They're multiplying. Because this isn't just about one policy or one bill or even one leader. It's about something deeper, respect. It's about people who feel invisible, unheard, and dismissed by those in power. When a nurse says, "I can't afford to live," that's not political theater, that's survival. When a father chooses between feeding his kids and paying his utility bill, that's not ideology, that's reality. Politics, at its core, is supposed to serve people. But right now, for millions, it feels like people are being sacrificed for politics. Starmer built his image as the sensible one, the lawyer, the detail man, the leader who could bring order after chaos. But somewhere between opposition and power, the details stopped, including the people. His speeches sound like PowerPoints, his interviews like rehearsed depositions, and his empathy, once his selling point, now buried behind the word necessary. He calls the rising cost of living a necessary sacrifice. But it's easy to talk about sacrifice when your heating is taxpayer funded. It's easy to preach about endurance when you've never had to calculate whether boiling a kettle means cutting dinner short. Something remarkable is happening tonight. This isn't a protest crafted by unions or funded by rival parties. There's no single leader, no campaign strategy, no PR team. This is organic, spontaneous, real. A movement born not from ideology, but from kitchen table arithmetic that no longer adds up. When a nurse working full-time can't afford heat, the system isn't under pressure, it's broken. When a war veteran who once fought for Britain now fights to stay warm in his own home, it's not a social issue, it's a moral failure. And when the Prime Minister response is more targets, more jargon, more trust the process, he's not leading, he's hiding. Even within Westminster, cracks are forming. 3 Labour backbenchers released a joint statement this afternoon calling for an urgent review of the energy policy. The translation: our constituents are furious. And in a rare admission, one Conservative MP, previously a staunch supporter of net zero targets, told reporters, "We can't save the planet by bankrupting the people who live on it." That isn't political rebellion. That's common sense, finally speaking louder than party lines. Because at some point, this stops being politics and becomes survival. It's not about left or right anymore. It's about up or down, those at the top making decisions, and those below living with the consequences. And tonight, those at the bottom are sending a clear message to the top. They're done being managed, done being lectured, done watching the powerful sacrifice nothing while demanding sacrifice from everyone else. Moments like this always reach a breaking point. When pain turns to persistence, when frustration becomes force, and tonight that force is echoing through every street leading to Downing Street. Historically, when citizens gather in numbers this vast and pain this raw, one of two things follows. Either the leader listens and changes course, or the leader falls. Keir Starmer still has time for the first option, but the clock is ticking, and it's ticking louder than the chants outside his window. Because the British people are famously polite, famously patient. We queue, we apologize when others bump into us, we endure quietly, because making a fuss isn't the British way. But there's a line, and tonight that line isn't just being crossed, it's being erased. This is no longer about energy bills or climate targets or policy jargon. It's about trust. It's about dignity. It's about being seen by a government that seems to have forgotten who it serves. If Starmer truly believes he's on the right side of history, then it's time to prove it. Not from behind a podium, not through a carefully worded tweet, but by stepping outside. No script, no cameras, just listening. Because history isn't written by politicians who hide behind talking points. It's written by people who refuse to be silent when silence costs more than speaking up. And tonight, Britain has done the math. The question isn't whether this movement fades, because movements built on truth don't fade. They grow, they spread, they change things. The real question is, will the Prime Minister listen before it's too late, before this crisis becomes not just political, but existential? Because when chants of Starmer must go stop being a slogan and start sounding like a mandate, that's when the story changes, not just for him, but for the country he promised to lead.